When I say Highland soldier, who do you think of? What does he look like? Where did he grow up? What did he do before he enlisted? And after? Let me be specific. He's a soldier of the 93rd Regiment of Foot. The Sutherland Highlanders, celebrated as the Thin Red Line during the Crimean War. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. And if you enjoy the video, then like it, share it, and watch the next one. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. I've been making a series of videos inspired by the picture of the Sutherland Highlanders standing in the thin red line at the Battle of Balaclava. And today, I want to disabuse you of some of the ideas that you have about the men in this Highland Regiment. To do that, I want to tell you about just one of the men standing in that line, painted by Robert Gibb in 1854. His name was Peter MacKay. I'll tell you where he was born in a moment, but first, his military service. Let me tell you, this guy was heroic. At 26, he was older than most new recruits to the Sutherland Highlanders when he signed up in April 1854, but with the physique and discipline of a man used to tough physical labour. As cholera swept through the camp, he first joined the regiment at Varna in Bulgaria. They were preparing to invade Crimea. He survived several waves of the disease, but there were more shaves with death to come. By September, he'd landed in the Crimean Peninsula, where training went from sparring into the all-too-real gut punch of combat at the ferocious Battle of Alma. Now, he wasn't one of the 4,000 Allied casualties it took to dislodge the Russians. So on the 25th of October 1854, as he stood two deep with 450 other men, recreated in the famous painting of that thin red line of Sutherland Highlanders on a ridge above the port of Balaclava. As they stood, facing an advancing force of galloping, sabre-wielding Russian cavalry, he must have longed for his old labouring job. As his commander called, "There's no retreat from here, men. You must die where you stand." Surely he longed for any job. When it was all over, Peter MacKay must have swelled with pride to be part of what would become one of the most celebrated actions in British military history. Would that have prepared them for the freezing temperatures, inadequate shelter and severe food and fuel shortages of the brutal siege of Sevastopol? I don't know. I do know that during that action he volunteered for a hazardous night mission into the Great Redan fortification and again distinguished himself, continuing the mission after an exploding Russian mine injured several comrades and nearly killed him and one of his officers. By the time he left Crimea, his chest was weighed down with the Crimean Medal, clasps for Alma, Balaclava and Sevastopol, the Turkish Crimea Medal and the French Médaille Militaire, rarely given to a private soldier. Private Peter MacKay had earned plaudits as well as his spurs. Then, during the Indian Mutiny, he fought in some of the hardest actions in the campaign, took part in the desperate battles during the relief of Lucknow. Then, on the 1st of December 1857, during fighting around Cawnpur, the same officer with whom he'd nearly died in Sebastopol was hit by a cannonball that destroyed his arm. Under fire, MacKay ran forward, bound the officer's wound and carried him to safety for treatment. 4 months later, during the capture of Lucknow, when an explosion caused a section of wall to collapse on another officer, trapping him beneath rubble with a broken thigh, MacKay jumped in, freed the officer and carried him to a medical station. Private MacKay went on to fight at the Battle of Bareilly and across Rohilkhand, all the way through to the end of the rebellion. He got the Indian Mutiny Medal with clasps for the relief of and capture of Lucknow. He took part in the Umbrella campaign in the harsh mountains on the northwest frontier. And another medal followed. Now, just before I tell you about his life after service and the really surprising part of the story, can I remind you that in 2026 I'll be taking 2 group tours of up to 25 people to show them some of the wonders of Scotland and its history. In April we'll go on the ultimate Jacobite tour, and in September my 11-day big bumper birthday tour, where I'll take you to all my favourite places from Hadrian's Wall to the Isle of Skye and wonderful spots in between. We'll be in wonderful hotels with me as your guide, so get more details by clicking top right or in the description below, or email alexis@scotlandhistorytours.co.uk. When he was discharged in 1871, still a private, Peter MacKay's commanding officers described him as a soldier of unwavering steadiness, bravery and endurance. He'd served the Crown in 3 major conflicts on 2 continents. He'd put his life on the line and saved the lives of others over 18 years of continuous service. But here's the thing. They tell me that you need 21 years of service to get a full military pension. So Peter MacKay went back to labouring on the docks, as he'd done before his illustrious military career began. From our vantage point, we often wonder why folks would put themselves through the rough discipline, brutal conditions and inevitable dangers Highland regiments were repeatedly thrown into. But if the alternative was working on a dock for piecework, doing long hours of hard physical labour with little security and even less prospect of advancement, maybe the army didn't seem such a bad alternative. Going back to dock work in your 40s was certainly no easy option. It was physically demanding when he left as a 26-year-old. It was no easier now. For 2 decades, he carried timber, hauled grain and worked whenever he could find uncertain employment. But in 1890, a serious injury meant that Peter couldn't work any longer. With scarce income, he quickly fell into poverty. Thankfully, 2 years later, he finally secured an army pension of £1 a day. Still barely enough for basic living standards. Let's not forget, this man had stood at that thin red line. You have to also remember that it was an action that changed the nature of warfare, inspired this, the most famous war painting of its time, and maybe ours. After that, he'd volunteered for danger, saved senior officers, and won numerous medals, some unusual to his rank. For this man, to be living in poverty was as shameful to the nation as it was tragic for himself. Now, the good news is that a justice of the peace discovered the conditions that he was living in, this war hero, and he started a campaign. Newspapers reported on his history. Former officers wrote letters telling how he'd saved their lives. The bad news is that whilst he got recognition for his service, there was no improvement in his financial conditions. Do you remember when we clapped for the NHS during COVID? Peter MacKay's health had deteriorated, and by 1898, he could no longer live independently. He was taken into a workhouse, the last refuge for the poorest citizens. On 8th of September 1898, at the age of 70, that's where he died in obscurity. A small group attended his funeral, buried in a pauper's grave provided by the parish. A stark contrast to the contribution he made in life and the praise recorded by those who saw his service. I've agonised about what to call this video. By the time you watch, you'll know what I chose. But at this stage, I haven't quite decided. One thought was what they don't say about Highland Regiments. Another was the unexpected hero in a Highland Regiment. Both are apt. Now, don't get me wrong. A veteran of a Highland Regiment fighting with bravery above and beyond and yet falling through the cracks into poverty and obscurity. That's not surprising. It's happened before, and I'm sure it'll happen again. What is surprising, the thing that defies expectations, the teachable moment, and the reason that I tell you the story of Peter MacKay today is that he's not who you had in your head as a Highland soldier. You see, the place he was born and brought up, the place he left to join the Sutherland Highlanders, the place to which he returned after he was discharged from this famous Highland Regiment, was Belfast. Yes, that's what people would never think of when they think about Highland Regiments. It seems to me that people imagine subdued Jacobites or descendants of cowed Jacobites pressed into service for the British Crown in order to retain Highland dress and the bagpipes, all the icons of Highland culture. The truth is that Sutherland wasn't Jacobite. It was pro-Hanoverian. Whilst Mackay is definitely a Sutherland name, everything we know about Peter Mackay tells us that he was born and grew up in Belfast. Did his family move there in the previous generation? The generation before that? Had his ancestors moved with the thousands of Protestant Scots who crossed the Irish Sea with plantation during the time of James VI? Wherever or whatever the connection, we know Peter Mackay was deeply loyal to the Crown. He took part in loyalist events. We know for a fact that in 1897 he marched at the head of an Orange Order procession carrying the Union flag and the Royal Standard. This Highland Regiment isn't quite the homogeneous group of Sutherland clansmen that you might imagine. We know from Peter Mackay's story that he wasn't even the only Irishman standing in that thin red line represented in this painting. There are several others. I can tell you from documents held here in this museum that in these two ranks there are men from Brechin in Angus, from Aberdeen, from Fraserburgh, from Argyll, Edinburgh and Fife. That's what folks don't tend to think about 19th century Highland regiments. But the only reason I know that the men in this picture are more diverse than you think is because I had to start digging when I heard the story of Peter Mackay. Born on the 25th of March 1828 in Berry Street, Belfast. Belfast, to which he returned after exemplary military service as a Sutherland Highlander of the thin red line. This painting delivers more stories than you can imagine. And there's another one of them coming up on screen now. If you enjoyed this video, then like it, share it, and watch the next one. Support the channel by clicking top right to become a Patreon member or buy me a coffee in the description below. In the meantime, Hummey and Dawkins can be Lamali. Cherry and Rasta.